Okay, thank you, Robin. Hi, everyone. My name is Ricky Sukram, and I'm the manager of Learning at Toronto Community Housing Corporation. We are the largest social housing service provider and in Canada and the second largest in North America. TCHC is wholly owned by the City of Toronto and operates in a nonprofit manner. Today, I had the pleasure of introducing Jennifer Fitzgerald Hansen, who will be presenting a session titled Giving and Receiving Challenging Feedback. Jennifer is an executive coach specializing in change management, communication, conflict resolution, emotional intelligence, and team skills development. A two-time graduate from the University of Toronto, she's passionate about continuous learning and regularly pursues advanced education to stay current. At Learngistics, Jennifer combines her expertise and enthusiasm to deliver engaging, results-driven training that helps individuals and teams move from good to great to extraordinary. Now I'm going to turn the floor over to Robin.
Thank you so much, Ricky. During this live presentation, please feel free to type any questions you have into the chat window. After the formal portion of the presentation, we will read out your questions for Jennifer to answer. This presentation is also being recorded and will be posted later to YouTube for those who could not attend today. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thanks very much. The chat is open. I always assume that some people are Teams people as opposed to Zoom people. So for those of you that might not be familiar, and I know you've been to a few presentations already today, but at the bottom bar so it's at the bottom of your screen, there's a chat button, and you can just click on that to open it up, and it will show up on the side of your screen. First thing I'm going to do about that is I'm welcoming you here today, but I'm going to ask where you're coming from. So what city are you located in? And if you could please type that in the chat, I would appreciate it. That way I know you're all paying attention. Oshawa, that's close to me. Belleville, that's close to Kingston, where I used to be. Whitby, close. Thunder Bay, not so close. Thornhill, my son is stationed in Edmonton, so there you go. Yeah, Maritimes, we've got the Maritimes covered. We've got Quebec covered. So this is great. Thank you very much. I'm going to beg you to do one more thing for me. And that is I'm going to ask you to turn on your cameras. And perhaps other presenters have asked that of you before. Previous presenter did because I was there for her presentation. But I'm going to tell you the why, because I think the why is so important. It helps me as a presenter keep my energy up. I need to keep my energy up for this whole hour. And when I can see how the material is landing for all of you, I don't care about your background. I don't care about your hair. You can have a cat on your desk. Usually mine is over here. But I would just really appreciate being able to see you. So if you wouldn't mind turning on. Thank you, gentlemen. I've got 3 gentlemen, 4 who've already turned on. You have no idea how, as a presenter, I appreciate that. So I'm going to let people get a chance for them to turn it on. That'd be wonderful. And again, just in case you're not a Teams person, because I believe Teams, everything's at the top. For Zoom, everything is at the bottom. So bottom left, you have a video button. You can just click on it and your screen will come up. So thank you very much for those of you that did. And some of you may consider doing it later on. I'd appreciate it. I seriously appreciate it. All right.
Jen,
so let's
sorry to interrupt. I did just want to quickly let you know that we did have the video option disabled because of our hacking experience earlier, but I have just enabled everybody to have their video on now.
Oh, okay. Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
I ask for it. I get it first. This is perfect. This is just perfect. Okay. So I'm not going to tell you about myself. You don't really care, but I do have a dog and a cat. That's really the most important thing. Animal lover here. The kids, the husband, where I am, my history really does not matter. All right, so I know some of you may have joined this session hoping that I'm going to hand over 4 or 5 magic tools to make giving and receiving challenging feedback easier. I hate to disappoint you, and I hope you don't shut off at this point, but that's not what I'm selling today. Because the truth is, great feedback doesn't start in the moment that it's given. It starts weeks, perhaps months before that moment ever happens. It's built into the day-to-day interactions, that the quick check-ins, the honest clarifications, the times we follow through, or even how we listen when someone else speaks. These small, consistent behaviors are what make the big conversations, the challenging ones, possible. They create the trust and the psychological safety that allows challenging feedback to land as support rather than as a threat. So today isn't just about what we say, it's about how we have shown up every day in ways that make people feel safe, respected, and productive when it really, really matters. So to get there, I want to start by looking at what happens when the foundation is in place, when words uplift and build confidence, which of course is why I want to start us off with a quote. Kind words can be short, easy to speak, but their echoes are truly endless. The impact of our words in the workplace, feedback, can sometimes feel heavy and awkward, even confrontational, but it doesn't have to be. Even the smallest kind words, a thank you, an acknowledgement, perhaps a moment of recognition, can have an outsized effect. Think about it, and I truly mean think about this. A single sentence of encouragement might only take 10 seconds to say, yet it can stay with someone for days, possibly weeks, and even years, shaping how they see themselves and how they show up at work. And that's why today's session matters. We're exploring how feedback, even challenging feedback, when given thoughtfully, can become a tool not just for improvement, but for building respect, trust, and motivation on teams. In project management, feedback isn't just about performance, it's about connection. It's how we lower tension, align goals, and move projects forward, even under pressure. So let's begin with a quick reflection. A moment we've all had at some point in our careers. I want you to think back when someone said something genuinely kind to you at work, something that made you feel seen or valued or capable. How did it shape the way you viewed yourself, your position on that team, or potentially your leadership? When we think about these moments, and the one I'm thinking about myself happened way back in the 90s, at the very beginning of my career, the kind words that still echo for us, it reminds us that feedback is more than just correction. It's influence, it's culture, and it has that ripple effect our words can have on other people. It affects someone's confidence, their growth, their sense of belonging. And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. How to create that same kind of connection, even when feedback is challenging. But let's flip for a second. What happens when feedback hurts instead of helps? Excuse me. So again, a quick reflection, but from the other side. In today's workplace climate with uncertainty, burnout, and constant change, feedback can sometimes land wrong, even when the intent is good. So I'd like you to think for a moment about a time when feedback didn't land well for you. What made it feel unsafe, discouraging, unhelpful? Robin, can you launch our poll, please? All right, so this is a multiple choice poll. You can choose as many results as you would like. And I implore everybody to participate, please. So this isn't, by the way, a workshop that you're going to get away with not participating through. Terrific. We've got about half the people. Can we get some more? Can we get higher? We're up to 30. This is great. Any more? All right. We'll leave it at 35. I'll accept that as success. Thank you, everyone who participated. All right, let's show some results. All right. So felt like a personal attack was number one, but close behind is timing, right? Oh, sorry, delivery. Delivery was number one. So those are our top three, right? Timing, delivery, felt like a personal attack. And I don't want to take away from the other responses. because they are all very important. But it's interesting that those are the ones that come to the top, but not surprising. All right, I'm going to stop the share. So many of us have been there, where their feedback was poorly timed, vague, delivered without empathy. Those moments tend to stick with us. Whatever your situation was, we all know what it feels like. But often what made the experience difficult or unsafe wasn't the feedback itself, it was the how it was delivered. It was the when it was delivered, and it was the how it was received. So let's unpack that a little bit. When teams don't have feedback-friendly culture, these moments compound. They add on top of each other. It's not just one uncomfortable conversation, it starts shaping the culture itself. When people begin to feel and expect feedback to be vague or harsh or one-sided, what happens is they stop listening. They stop speaking up, and they stop trusting the whole process. That's when you know you don't just have a feedback problem, you have a culture problem. So let's take a look at what those signs might look like in a team. So project teams under pressure often slip into silence or defensiveness, especially when the feedback feels unsafe. It's not a lack of skill, it's a lack of trust. So you may get emotional responses. People look shocked or upset or defensive after getting feedback. You may notice anger or resentment or withdrawal instead of sort of a curiosity and an openness. You may get silence or avoidance. Employees don't respond during feedback conversations, or they give forced, polite responses. Feedback sessions are rushed. Maybe they're skipped entirely. You may end up with no behavioral change. The same issue keeps coming up and up and up, even after multiple rounds of feedback. People nod in agreement. You get something like this, but they don't follow through on the improvements. Maybe you get declining trust and engagement. Team members stop sharing ideas or updates, fearing that they're going to be criticized. Morale dips. People talk about feedback sessions negatively behind the scenes. You may find that feedback becomes totally one-sided versus a two-way conversation. Managers give the feedback, but employees never feel comfortable giving it upward or commenting during the discussion. Conversations seem more like lectures rather than dialogue. So you may end up getting over-focused on negatives feedback. So it's mostly critical with little or no recognition of success. Employees feel demotivated and they have nothing is ever good enough. You may end up generating a defensive culture. Staff argue instead, or they justify themselves instead of reflecting on the feedback. You may get absolutely no agreement on how to move forward. It might be that the KPIs or the metrics that are put in place aren't agreed upon, or worse yet, they aren't even given. So how is an employee supposed to hit the target and be successful? You may not have follow-up, right? What do we do when that happens? So I'll ask, if there's no follow-up, how can improvement be monitored and wins celebrated? Without follow-up, there's very little space for asking those follow-up questions. So this is just part of when feedback hits so hard and so poorly, it shuts people down instead of lifting them up. So if poor feedback moments keep repeating, they don't just stay isolated, they become patterns, and those patterns are what shape the culture. When feedback goes wrong, often enough people start expecting it to go wrong, and they brace themselves for it. We've all been there. That's when trust begins to erode and motivation takes a hit, and the culture shifts into something less open and less safe. These are some of the clearest signs that a workplace may not have a feedback-friendly culture. So ultimately, when feedback breaks down, we lose more than just good communication. We actually lose connection. So let's step back and ask ourselves this. Why does feedback matter so much? Is it so important to know what it is so important to know that the why before we proceed. Remember, when giving and feedback is challenging, emotions run high and hot. So the number one reason is improved psychological safety. And I can't stress this enough. When people feel safe, they're willing to speak up, share ideas, take risks. Feedback is one of the strongest signals that a workplace team is safe or unsafe. Beyond that, effective feedback drives performance and motivation. People know where they stand, what's working, and what needs to be adjusted. Certainly strengthens communication and fosters professional growth, which turns into higher engagement. Now, there are a whole bunch of other benefits too. Things like goal alignment and innovation, adaptability, reducing errors, retaining talent, even improving client satisfaction. But at the core, feedback is about building safety, trust, and clarity so that the teams can survive. When psychological safety is high, teams flourish. When it's missing, everything feels harder. So what do you do when challenging feedback is not delivered well? Whether you have to give it or you have to receive it. So what you get is this mishandled or uncomfortable situation. If it's in some cases, it's avoided altogether. It doesn't just create an awkward conversation. It actually creates real business costs. So let's start with that. When people walk away from a meeting unsure of what the expectations are of them, the priorities or their deliverables, they fill in the blanks for themselves. Everyone fills them in differently. The result? Rework, frustration, and eventually burnout. You'll hear comments like, I thought you meant, or that's not what I understood. Misalignment erodes both time and energy. Then there's unclear expectations. This one's a silent killer of performance. When goals or standards aren't clearly discussed, or when feedback on progress is vague, people can't course correct early. That's how missed deadlines and last-minute scrambles happen. It's not about capability, it's about clarity. And finally, lack of trust. This is the cultural cost. When feedback feels unsafe or one-sided, people stop sharing ideas. They play small. Creativity drops. So does ownership. Why would people speak up if they're just going to be criticized or ignored? The hidden cost of mismanaged feedback is emotional. Disengagement, resentment, loss of confidence. But the visible cost is operational. Missed targets, duplicated work, turnover. So I'm going to pause here for a moment, and we're going to use the chat. Which of these three shows up most often on your team? Misalignment, unclear expectations, lack of trust. Just throw that into the chat. Trust. Trust seems to be the winner. Misalignment. First two. All right, so we're seeing kind of the same. So easily it could be any of the three, right? Again, thank you for participating. I really appreciate it. The good news is all of these challenges are fixable. The key isn't just what we say in feedback, but how we say it. So let's look at how feedback, when done well, becomes actually superpower. The real power of feedback isn't correction, it's connection. It's a dialogue that says, we're in this together. When we master that, we unlock higher performance and psychological safety. To do that, we need to shift how we see feedback. So the goal isn't to give feedback, it's to create dialogue. The idea should be that feedback is a loop, not a moment, not a one-way dialogue that happens once, but rather a conversation between two people that continues. To be fair, it's not even what we say that once. It's the back and forth part that builds the trust. It's the consistency of daily conversations. It's about genuinely wanting either the team member to grow and get better, or if you're receiving it, the feedback you're given, you take it with a growth mindset, open to change and learning, not being defensive, which is often our fallback position. Again, I just want to stress that the environment for giving feedback is set days, weeks, possibly months before that feedback is actually given. So let's take a look at the feedback loop for the first time and talk about where connection actually breaks. So here you see this is a continuous loop. We're shifting from seeing feedback as a moment to seeing it as that loop. Every piece of feedback, positive or challenging, whether you're giving it or receiving it, goes through these 5 stages. At each stage, there's risk that the message can get lost, misunderstood, or even resisted. It starts with intent. What did someone mean to say? Maybe your goal is to help someone improve, clarify expectations, or prevent a mistake from recurring. But remember, intent lives in your head, not theirs. Then comes delivery. The words you choose, the tone you use, your body language, even your timing. This is where so many good intentions get derailed. A rushed or poorly timed conversation can absolutely undo the best message. So now we have reception, how it's heard. This is where emotion steps in. The listener filters your words through their own stress and assumptions and self-image. And that's why curiosity and empathy are so critical here. They help close this gap between what you meant and what they heard. Then there's impact, what actually lands. You can often tell by someone's body language or their tone or their reaction whether that feedback created understanding or defensiveness. And finally, we have follow-up, the part that's most often skipped. Checking back in a few days or weeks to see what's changed, to turn that feedback into growth. It also shows that you care about the outcome, not just the correction. The biggest insight here, feedback isn't a one-way transfer of information. It's a shared conversation that takes time, over time. So I'd like you to think, and again, please feel free to use it in the chat to inform me in the chat. And think about where in your experience the feedback breaks down most often. Is it in the intent? Is the delivery, is the reception, impact, follow-up? Maybe it's actually more than one. Delivery. Yeah, we have people that need to learn more about feedback, right? Giving feedback. No follow-up, for sure. No follow-up, we don't know how people have done. Thank you, folks. So let's see how we can make that easier with a few practical tools. So as you'll see, I like quotes. The only way to know what someone intended is to ask them, and the only way to let a person know their impact is to tell them. So not rocket science here. It all gets back to the heart of feedback. On the pull side, which is asking, if you're not sure what someone meant or what their intention was, the only way to really know is to ask them. We often make assumptions. They ignored me. They don't care. But those are stories we tell ourselves. So I'd like you to think back to that second self-reflection I asked you about at the beginning, when feedback was hurtful. You told yourself a story about that situation, and I would bet you never asked any clarifying questions to learn about it. Pulling feedback or simply asking about intention clears that up and builds trust. On the push side, giving feedback, people can't read our minds. They don't realize, sorry, they don't realize how the words or actions or behaviors landed. If you don't get them, if you don't tell them your impact, both positive and negative, they keep guessing. And that's why feedback is a gift. It gives people visibility into how they're showing up for others. So feedback needs to flow both ways. Asking reveals intent, telling reveals impact. When teams do both consistently, communication becomes clearer, safer, and far more effective. Can you see why trust is so important on a team in this situation? Without trust, it makes it nearly impossible for people to push or to pull. This quote reminds us that the only way to close the gap is through communication, asking to understand intent and sharing the impact we've experienced. And that's where many feedback conversations fall apart, because here's the truth. Intent doesn't always equal impact. What we mean and what actually lands with the other person may be very different. So simply put, our intent or our motivation or our purpose of our actions may not be clear in the way we deliver feedback. And the impact is what we achieve, the results of which we have no control over. It's how it lands. So again, I just want to say this one more time. Intent and impact are not the same thing. And here's a piece that's very interesting. When we act, we judge ourselves by our intentions. I didn't mean to upset them. I was just being direct. But when others experience us, they measure us by our impact. That comment felt harsh, dismissive. And the space between intent and impact is what I like to call the feedback gap. The gap is where misunderstandings live. Most of us give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, but others only see the behavior and its effect. That's why feedback is so crucial. Without it, we assume our good intentions are enough. But if the impact isn't matching the intent, relationships, trust, performance, they all suffer. So here's the key takeaway here. We need both sides of feedback. If you're unsure about someone's intent, ask them, pull feedback from them. If you want someone to understand their impact, tell them, push the feedback. Bridging this gap is what transforms misunderstandings into healthy communications. It's what creates the conditions for psychological safety. So if intent and impact aren't the same, the real work of feedback is navigating that space between the two. That space, the gap, is where the misunderstandings, the assumptions, the frustrations, that's where they live. It's also where learning happens. So let me show you a simple model that captures this, from intent through the gap to impact and ultimately towards the lesson that can move us forward. So again, just want to thank you to take a moment to think about a time when your intent didn't match the impact, when you were trying to be helpful, but it came across as micromanaging. You were trying to be funny, but it landed as sarcasm, or you thought you were being clear, but the other person was left confused. Think about that one example for yourself. Now I need you to reflect. What was your intent? What did you mean to say? And what was that impact on the other person? How did it land with that other person? And here's the curious piece. How did you find out that your intent didn't match your impact? Did somebody tell you? Did you notice their reaction? Did you notice that it didn't align the intent and the impact? And most importantly, the lesson. What could you have done differently in that moment? So again, I'm going to throw you into the chat. If you like, type 1 or 2 words about what you noticed or what you learned. What was the big takeaway? What would you do differently next time? We'll talk about the feedback sandwich. And no, I'm not a big believer in it, just to be clear. That's actually mild about how I feel about it. But so more active listening, confirm intent with the impact of the receiver. Oh, I love that, Tim. Try to keep emotions out, stick to the facts. I'm going to massage that one a little later. Time is very important, absolutely. Reaffirm what you think was heard. Can I change that reaffirm to ask questions about what you think was heard? Ask. Yep. Okay. So this, it doesn't have to be a big event. It could be small, everyday interactions that matter most. Taking time to notice when these gaps occur is how we learn to close them. And it's funny, I'm hoping when you go away from this webinar that you'll notice how common these mismatches are. Most of us don't set out to offend or confuse or discourage, but without the feedback, we may never know how our words and actions really land. And that's why bridging intent and impact gap is so central to building psychological safety and strong team communication. This model shows us that real growth comes from exploring the gap between intent and impact. But here's the challenge. In many organizations, feedback has been reduced to pointing out what went wrong. It becomes a fault-finding exercise instead of a learning opportunity. Simon Sinek makes this point brilliantly. He reminds us that feedback should be less about catching mistakes and more about asking the deeper question, which is, why is this happening? So I have a really short clip.
So one of the things that we do is creating a culture in which people understand that the reason we're giving feedback is not to quote unquote criticize them, but to help them grow as human beings. And that has to be established. Like
We're not
this
hearing
is what
anything
the advice
yet.
I offer is it's not just a
Oh,
checklist that you do and everything goes fine.
sorry, you're not hearing anything?
Nope. We can't hear a clip if you've
Oh,
started it.
but I've got somebody with the fingers up.
Oh.
So is that the thumbs up meaning you can hear? Yes, so some of you can hear, some of you can't. I can't do anything about those of you that can't. What I can do for those of you that can't is, oh, most people can hear. Okay. For those of you that can't, if you reach out to me at the end, I can send you the link. If you email me, do it on LinkedIn, anything like that, I'll send you the link. Okay. Let's go back to Simon then, for those of you that can.
You create a culture in which difficult conversations and critical feedback are welcomed or at least understood. But it's also how we give it. Usually we give it by pulling out a piece of paper and pointing out the thing that's wrong, and saying you got to fix something, right? We usually point to the evidence first, as opposed to starting by the human being, which is, there's stuff I want to share with you. I don't know what it means, but I wanted to raise it with you in case there is an issue. Because I care about you and I want to see that you grow here, but there's some evidence that things are going a little sideways, and I want to address them with them to see what opportunities there are, or if there's anything wrong, because I don't know the reasons behind it. But here's, for example, the way you talked to your teammates the other day was a little harsh. And ordinarily, I'd be one to say, "Oh, you're having a bad day. It's no problem. Everybody gets a bad day." But you've been really beating up on people. I don't even know if you were aware of that, right? And sometimes they'll say, "I'm having a hard time," and it opens up, or they'll say, "I wasn't even aware. I didn't even know," or it reveals something, as opposed to saying, "Stop yelling at people. Nobody wants to work for you if all you do is yell at people." It's hard for people to receive, and so good feedback is not just about conveying the point we're trying to make. It's about creating a condition in which the person is more likely to listen and hear it. So we're all proud of ourselves once we've told them, did you give her the feedback? Yeah, I told her, right? Did they hear the feedback? Different question.
Someone put in Amanda put in the chat that Marcus Buckingham is another great person for this, and absolutely 100% agree. If I were to whittle this tool down into one word, it would be curiosity. Don't make assumptions. Don't think you know another person's why. Instead, you need to ask them, have that conversation, show your good intent, and believe in theirs.
So
there we go. So up until now, we've been focusing on giving challenging feedback. But one of the most powerful things you can do as a leader, and a leader is anyone who's working on a team, or as well as team member, it's actually to ask for that feedback, to pull it in, and in order to maintain personal growth mindset of wanting to do better and to get better. So let's use pull feedback in another way and for another use. Why? Because when you ask for feedback, you're showing a real openness and humility. You're signaling that you don't have all the answers and you're willing to learn. It shows a growth mindset. But it also builds trust and credibility. People see you as serious about improving, not just about pointing out what others should do. By asking for feedback, you can uncover your blind spots, things you may not realize about your own behavior or your communication style. And just as important, excuse me, it models the culture. When leaders ask for feedback, it just normalizes it for the whole team. It suddenly shifts the feedback from being top down, one-way message, to being two-way conversations that also goes across a team as well. So I have another poll for you. So that is, when was the last time you invited someone to give you feedback about how you're doing? Not just about tasks, but about your leadership or your communication style. So this one you only get to answer once, please. So have you asked within the last week, the last month, last 6 months, more than 6 months? I've never done it. And that's okay, because it's not the most common thing. I am hoping I'm introducing a new idea here. So we've got 25. Can we hit 35 again? We got 35 on the last poll. Come on, guys, you can do it. Maybe you can even do it higher. We can get there. Slowly, slowly. I don't want to waste time. So let me end the poll. Oh, we have a last minute flurry. All right, we hit 31. I'll take it. I'll share the results here for you. So I absolutely applaud all of you who have done this in the last week or the last month. Doesn't mean that those of you that didn't hit that mark, you didn't know, and now you know. So now you ask. But asking in the last week, oh, incredible, right? You're asking people how you're showing up for them, how you're supporting them, what you can do better. I'm just going to stop that share. Let me get it out of here. All right. So now I'm asking you to do something, but how can you do that in a way that feels both safe and constructive for both you and the person that you're asking? It actually boils down to a couple of simple questions. So what's one thing I could do more of, less of, or something I could do differently, right? So when you ask for feedback, this can be of your direct reports, fellow team members. It can even be of who you report to. It can feel really awkward at first. People may hesitate. So having this sort of simple structure really helps. If it's something I could do, more of, maybe it's more clarity, more recognition, more check-ins. Less of micromanaging, interrupting, too many emails. Differently, something I could do differently. Wow, that's the big one, right? That opens the door to specific actions that could strengthen your relationship. But notice that each question is focused and specific. So you're not saying, am I a good leader? Am I a good team member? You're asking for one small thing that you could adjust. And that makes it easier for the people to answer honestly. This keeps the conversation constructive. If you're practicing this, it'll give you some valuable insight. But you also model that behavior of feedback, that it's normal, it's expected, it's safe. But if you ask these questions long before you should be asking these questions long before you need to actually deliver challenging feedback. Schedule time for people. You can do it even on a coffee break, whether it's with a peer, a boss, or a direct report, because you're not asking for something great. You're asking for something small and focused. So ultimately, these three questions, they turn feedback into a two-way street. When it happens later, at a later date, everybody is understanding that feedback's a real thing and you're in the culture of this team. You're setting the stage for trust and collaboration and clarity. People lower their defensiveness because you've shown humility first. So right now, I have a feeling that some of you might be thinking about someone you want to try this on. So in the chat, just tell me, where is their position in the team? Or are you thinking about asking this of the person that you report to? Who do you think you want to try this out on first? Anybody? No? Nope. Hold on. The colleague in another team. I like that. Very good, in another team. That's great. Manager. Oh, students too. Yes. Work students. Yep. Great. Love it. All right. Terrific. Thank you. You're giving other people on the webinar some ideas. Excuse me. So, I hope I've shown you how powerful it is to ask these simple questions, to pull feedback in. But asking is only half the equation. Of course, the other half is making the feedback actually be heard so that you absorb it and you act on it. If you get this information and you do nothing with it, you actually have done more than waste your breath. You've actually eroded their trust. So let's look at how to make it safer and more effective through simple, curious-driven questions. Okay. So this is where small change can make big differences. When feedback feels tough, our instinct, especially under stress, is to judge. We humans are big judgers. We hear something that didn't work and our brains immediately go to, well, why did you do that? but that why often triggers defensiveness in people. It puts the other person on trial. So a micro moment of curiosity changes that dynamic. It slows the reaction, it lowers the tension, and opens that space for learning. Try shifting your why did you to, can you walk me through your thinking? What constraints were you facing? You'll notice that the energy changes immediately. The conversation moves from defending to explaining. So if you were to think about I'd like you to think about a curious question that you could use this week. We've still got another day to go. Won't bother asking you to put it in the chat, but it's something that you should be thinking about. How could you use either these questions or something else in a situation that you're living? And once we replace judgment with curiosity, we can take it one step further, focusing not on what went wrong, but what we can do next time. So these are examples of how you can do this. And I love this technique. The idea is that it's feed-forward approach. So remember, traditional feedback always looks backwards. It focuses on what we've already done, and often it's stuff we can't change. Whereas feed-forward, on the other hand, shifts the attention to the future, to learning, to growth, to possibility. It's a simple language change, but with a big psychological effect. So you should have, what should we try differently next time? That didn't work. What can we learn from this? You missed the mark. How can we make this work better next time? When someone hears next time, it activates a problem-solving part of their brain rather than shame. It communicates, I believe in you. You can get this right. This is especially powerful in project settings where deadlines, changes, and stress levels are so high. So again, I'm going to ask you, reflect back on a piece of feedback you've given recently that didn't land so well, for whatever reason, doesn't matter. Could you rephrase it? Could you move it from looking at the past to using the next time and doing that feed forward approach? I have faith that you can. So let's just look back at the feedback loop and use it with this newfound curiosity about when it breaks down, right? So I want you to see it with curiosity this time around. When it needs to be repaired, we have to look at it differently. So every piece of feedback moves through this loop, as I've said before, but there's a truth here that I didn't tell you when I first showed you the loop. Feedback almost never runs smoothly around the circle. Somewhere along the way, there's friction, there's emotion, or there's misunderstanding. That's okay. What matters is how we repair the loop and how quickly we repair the loop. Maybe your intent was helpful, but the delivery came across as harsh. Or perhaps your feedback was well phrased, but the person wasn't ready to hear it that day. That's a normal part of communication. Repairing the loop means circling back with curiosity and care instead of frustration. You might say something like, I realize that what I said yesterday may not have landed the way I intended. Can we revisit that conversation? Or, I just wanted to check in. How did that feedback sit with you after you had some time to think about it? Simple language reopens the dialogue and reestablishes the trust. It shifts the energy from defensiveness to collaboration. It also models emotional maturity, showing that feedback isn't about being right. It's about working effectively together. If you're on the receiving end of challenging feedback that didn't land well, you can repair it yourself. Try saying something like, I know that feedback was meant to help. Can you give me an example of what you'd like me to do differently? The ability to repair the loop, to go back, to clarify, to reconnect, that's what separates teams that just talk from teams that learn. All right? So we've talked about asking better questions, about choosing better language, but how do we make sure feedback like this becomes a team norm and not just a one-time event? I know we're getting near the end. The best teams make feedback part of the rhythm, not the rescue. So when feedback is rare, it feels risky. When it's frequent and normalized, it just feels like part of what we do. So you can do some tiny rituals. These small practices say feedback isn't something we fear, it's something we value. So when feedback becomes part of your team's rhythm, it shifts from a performance tool to a relationship tool. And that's where connection grows. And this slide just brings it all together. Challenging feedback doesn't get easier, but it does get safer when teams make it a two-way conversation. It becomes a connective tissue. It strengthens rather than strains the team. Two-way means that leaders ask for it as often as they give it. It models humility, and it's okay to ask others to be honest too. The truth is, feedback is never easy. But when both sides are committed to learning, not winning, feedback turns from friction into forward motion. Curiosity over critique keeps the focus on shared learning, not fault finding. It tells the team we're in this together. And it's a regular reflection that these small feedback rituals build trust, one conversation at a time. So let's end with one final thought. Is your feedback being really heard, or is it just being said? So as we close, I'd like you to sort of take the last 15 seconds to think about one person on your team, someone who needs honest feedback, push, or someone whose feedback you would like to invite, pull. What's one question or one sentence or one mindset shift that could bring you closer to that next conversation and make it land better? Because challenging feedback doesn't just move projects forward. If done well, it strengthens relationships. So let's wrap up with a few key takeaways and where to go from here. So first of all, I want to thank you for spending some time with me and diving into this tough but very valuable skill we can practice. If you'd like to get a deeper dive, connect with me. We just reach out. I'm also going to, when I finish with my slide deck, I'm going to throw something into the chat, which is just like a cheat sheet, feedback that connects. It's a quick reference sheet about the things that we've talked about. Remember, one piece of feedback is a chance to connect, and connection is how we land teams and take them through uncertainty. So I'm going to ask for questions. Yeah, actually, I'm going to do the one that I remember. I think there was one before that, but someone asked about the sandwich method. Hate the sandwich method. The reason why I hate the sandwich method is people go away remembering that bottom slice of sandwich, which is where you tell them something good, and often completely forget the piece that is in the middle that you're trying to develop or change or get better, whatever you want to look at it. My suggestion is always to think about this as a conversation, a dialogue. There isn't a way that is always repeatable. It's different for every person. Robin, were there any other questions? I think there was one really early.
There was one earlier.
I think it was something about when they don't give direct feedback to someone. Yeah, it was Amanda. Amanda's shaking her head. Yes, it's probably her question. Yeah, I can't, I'm not going to go back. I don't remember.
I've got it. I do have it here. As a PM, we often are not involved in the feedback process for a team member not being their manager. How do you provide feedback when it's not wanted by the managers?
Okay, but you don't have to be the manager to give feedback, would be my question. As colleagues, whether you're equal or whether you're not, it's important to give feedback. And you're going to start it now by asking for that feedback. And what typically happens is when you go to, I'm going to pick Rob. When I go to Rob and I say, Rob, what's something I could do less of, more of? How could I support you? Rob's going to give me his answer. And then typically Rob's going to say, oh, like he's going to think, well, maybe I should be asking that question. Jen, what should I do less of, more of, or what? And I'm going to give him the answer. So you don't have to be someone's direct report. No, did I get that? You don't have to be a leader of a direct report to give feedback. Anyone can give feedback if you follow it the way I'm talking about it, with the intention to build team connection. I think there's another question at the end. How often should we ask for feedback? As much as you want to. You've got a lot of people you can ask it from. right? So, I wouldn't be going around asking everybody every week, but there's enough people that you work with, that you interact with, that you don't have to, sorry, I should say you don't have to ask the same person every week there, but you could be asking for it every week just from different people. Any other
Okay,
questions?
Yeah, we can give one last chance for questions.
I wanted to stop my share, but I can't figure out how to do that. Just give me a second so that I can drop my document in the chat for you. Except my thing is not, okay, hold on. Sorry, I've got to look all over from various screens to get it to you. There it is. Okay. All right. There's your cheat sheet. That is what we've talked about today. It does ask you to download it, so you have to download it and save it. And I guess it's whether you trust me to, be a reasonable person and I'm not giving you something bad. Totally up to you. But folks, and at the bottom of the cheat sheet is my contact information. So please feel free to reach out. Just have a conversation. Hey, I love talking to people. You might have noticed that. I'm kind of that kind of personality. All right.
Okay.
Thanks very much, folks. Robin, anything you want to yeah, you got something.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. What a super helpful presentation.
Terrific. Always around.
Okay, thank you.